Come with me as I go to great creative lengths to love bomb my family. When I say love bomb, I'm not referring to the psychological manipulative tactic. I'm not talking about overwhelming people with affection, flattery, or gifts to create or maintain some strange codependent existence.
I'm not going to be ignored, Dad.
My love bombing is coming from a place of pure innocence and good intentions. So do not pour any unwanted raisin comments in my comment section. We are seeing the same word here, but opposite behavior. So why did I even bother with this? Truth is, the family had a rough start after our big move. And personally, I fell out of the routine of wanting to experience and express joy. But after some needed time and calibration, I'm starting to feel like my old celebratory self again. So with that, I bought a bunch of Valentine's decor and treats and planned a festive tablescape. Now, I knew my husband and daughter would be going out of town for a scouting event on the 14th. So I made the executive decision to celebrate a day early. I started grabbing things fairly early as stores tend to start marketing holidays like 3 months in advance. So little by little, I started getting stuff here and there, mostly from the dollar bins or discounted bins. It looks like a lot, but I didn't spend a whole bunch. At least not according to my standards and budget. We don't typically make Valentine's Day a big deal in our house. This year, however, I had that loving feeling. Besides that, doing these little gestures helps with familial bonds. It signals that I value my kids and my spouse. And I hope I'm setting standards that my kids can model in their future romantic and platonic relationships. For me, thoughtfulness is the baseline. Now, I'll try to refrain from complaining about Mother's holiday labor because anything I'm doing, especially on this Valentine's Day, is truly of my own volition.
Moms don't enjoy, they give joy.
No one forced me to do any of this. Besides, decorating is my love language, especially for holidays, special events, and milestones. It brings me joy and is a creative outlet that pushes me to explore various forms of expression and techniques. I'm also doing this outside of the conventional expectations of grade school Valentine celebrations or Valentine's card exchanges. My kids are teens and no longer in this phase, which adds a nostalgic element to this tablescape. Some part of me misses their grade school years. Even with all those fond memories, I know not to project too much onto my family. Moves disrupt more than addresses. They shift routines, energy, identity. Decorating again feels like reclaiming a small piece of continuity. This tablescape is less about Valentine's Day and more about me returning to myself. I'm not doing anything revolutionary here. This is not a masterclass in luxury event styling. It's literally a stack of paper plates, and I think they were about $1 a pack. In addition, I have some ribbon from the Dollar Tree. You don't need specialty items to create warmth. Sometimes you just need resourcefulness and imagination. I went on a little scavenger hunt for memes that actually matched my family's sense of humor. Not the generic Valentine's sentiment, but the kind of sarcasm and slightly unhinged wit that aligns with our sensibilities. I pulled a handful from someecards.com, and at first, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do with them. They just sat there on my desk like oversized inside jokes. I'm like, okay. I considered taping them to the wall, maybe scattering them on the table. At the end of the day, I had to concede that they needed something more dynamic. And that's how they turned into little meme mobiles that would be suspended mid-air, which is great for interactive engagement. The mini mailboxes were adorable, but I didn't want them to sit too humbly on the table. And I could have left it alone. I could have stacked a book underneath and called it a day. But no, of course, I opened Adobe Illustrator. I drafted simple box templates, formatted them to print, added Valentine graphics, and built custom risers. Because apparently, we don't just decorate. At this point, I'm working on infrastructure engineering. Once folded and stacked, the mailboxes finally had a proper stage. A little elevation goes a long way. I knew I wanted the mailboxes to feel dramatic, not just, here's your Valentine. I'm looking for cinematic. In my mind, I kept seeing that Harry Potter scene where the letters start pouring out of the fireplace. Absolute chaos. Envelopes flying, landing everywhere, completely unavoidable. That's the concept I was going for, and it was on theme with love bombing. At first, I grabbed the classic boxed Valentine cards from the store. I picked up Roblox, Hello Kitty, K-pop, Demon Hunters. They were cute, but when I started laying them out, I realized I didn't have enough volume for the illusion. If these were going to look like they were bursting out of a mailbox mid-flight, I needed abundance. I needed layers, I needed movement, I needed density. And I also wanted range. I didn't want to skew too little kid, but I didn't want it to feel overly romantic either. I have teens, they live somewhere between irony and serenity. I wanted something gender neutral, perhaps something that honored nostalgia, like vintage angels, slightly strange humor, and something that felt relatable without being cringe. That brought me to Etsy. I found printable Valentine collections that had personality. Some were retro, some were weird in the best way, some were playful without being saccharine. I'll credit the vendors because digital artists deserve respect, especially when their work becomes part of a larger installation like this. Once printed and cut, they gave me scale. They gave me texture. Suddenly, the mailbox didn't just contain cards, it was erupting. I knew these garlands would give me the effect I was looking for. If I'm going to stage an illusion, it might as well feel a little magical. I also stumbled across a few PDFs for paper airplanes and these vintage style postcards. The postcards felt especially charming. That old airmail border, the tiny stamp detail, like something you find tucked inside a book decades later. I used those for actual messages. Each one slipped into the mini mailboxes with a personal note tailored to each family member. The paper airplanes, though, those were pure delight and completely unnecessary, which is exactly why they stayed. I folded them at my desk like I was 10 years old again, creasing each corner carefully, testing their balance even though they were never meant to fly. They became little suspended moments. They made a great whimsical addition. By this point, I had been working on this project on and off for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of being suspiciously busy. Cracking my door open just enough to slip through when someone called my name. Moving like a secret agent in my own house. But to be fair, they already kind of know me to be strange, so they really didn't think much of it. The day before staging, I was down to the final details. I made these little glass bottle holders for heart flags. Tiny anchors filled with colored sand so that they'd stand upright and behave. Then came the centerpiece, the oversized foil exo heart balloon. I confidently grabbed my electric pump only to discover it's both aggressively loud and completely useless for the task. So there I was at night on the floor using this little straw that was provided with the balloon and relying on good old-fashioned lung power. Y'all know how fun that is. Jesus. Next up, the balloons that were supposed to spell love, except when I opened the package, the L had the audacity to be torn at the top. Just disrespectful. I attempted surgery with Scotch tape. That failed immediately, so I pivoted. The tiny heart balloons that came with the pack, they became part of the heart flag display instead. Because even at the 11th hour, you have to be willing to adapt. Creativity is less about perfection and more about refusing to quit when the L betrays you. And since this needed to be a true morning surprise, I had to outpace everyone in the house, which meant setting my alarm for 3 a.m., 3 hours before sunrise, to stage the entire tablescape undetected and in silence.
Moms don't end joy, they give joy.
You're probably curious with how everyone reacted. I can tell you this, they were more than surprised and very appreciative of my efforts and hard work. Now, I wanted to touch on my perception of my family members. Initially, I had different expectations for how my kids would react to the tablescape, but I had to come to terms with the fact that they were no longer little kids. In some ways, I was connecting with the younger versions of them. But they're older now, and they respond to things differently than they did back then, maybe even more slowly. I was holding a memory overlay of the 7-year-old and 10-year-old versions of them, the wide-eyed versions of them. Older kids don't always explode outward, they absorb inward. As children grow, reactions shrink, but impact deepens. Though I loved making the tablescape and love bombing, it was all done in fun. They technically don't need spectacles anymore, but they do need recognition. My only hope is to give the gift of loving, warm memories. I can't freeze them at 8 years old, but I can help set the tempo of our home. May it maintain a loving beat.